There was just nothing to explain it, nothing. It was just very, very scary.
You are about to see real people.
This is not normal.
Reliving horrifying paranormal encounters for the first time.
Oh, I felt terror.
When ghosts attack the living.
He wanted her, and he was gonna get her.
I buried this for nearly 30 years.
Be prepared to be afraid.
Story number 21, take one.
Al Kelchner dreamed of living a quiet life in the countryside. And in 2001, he needed some peace more than ever.
I went through a difficult period in 2001, including my father's death, 9/11, and then I was laid off from the company that I was working for. I'd reached a point in my life where I needed a change. I needed some calm in my life. My dad was a farm boy, so being out in the country, especially someone who was from the urban New York metropolitan area, that was a big thrill.
So Al made a change. He left New York City and bought a hobby farm in Illinois.
It was kind of, I don't know, magical. It just fulfilled every expectation I had about the type of little farm I wanted. It was picture, postcard perfect. I just saw potential and possibilities.
Al was so taken with the farm that he bought it on impulse, without having stepped foot inside. It would be a decision he'd live to regret.
It was very dark, physically, literally physically dark. Oh, it was threatening. It just, you felt uneasy the second you walked into that house. You felt as though you were being watched. It was a very negative, dark energy and extremely intimidating. I did subsequent research and found out that it was a pretty interesting place. There's a lot of history from from the Revolution and colonial days. I was very conflicted. I found my little dream farm, but at the same time, I hated going home at night. The drive, the closer I got, the more unnerved I became because I knew I had to open that back door and walk into a totally dark house out in the country by myself.
Al's uneasy feeling in the house remained just a feeling, until a few days after he moved in.
One morning I got up and I went into the bathroom to shower and get ready for work. And the bathroom was a mess. Towels were on the floor. Toiletries were scattered around. Items had been taken out of the cabinet and they were laying across the top of the vanity. I was uneasy. I had no logical explanation.
Little did Al know, this was just the beginning. Soon he began to experience other strange phenomena.
There was walking, talking, and frequently my face was touched and stroked. It was one of those experiences you can't see, you can't explain, and it's really unnerving. But that wasn't the end of it. I was sitting in the family room and talking with a friend on the phone when I heard, suddenly, loud knocking by the front door in the living room. which was a room and a half away. And then moved into the parlor, which is adjacent to the living room. And upstairs, directly over my head. It probably lasted a couple of minutes and was incredibly unnerving. And that was when I finally threw in the towel, raised the white flag and said, okay, I believe in you. So we're going to have to coexist.
If Al thought acknowledging whatever was haunting his house would calm the activity, he was wrong.
I was in the corner of the kitchen. I had bread in the toaster. And as I stood there, all of a sudden I felt a sharp pain in the back of my neck. And I thought, well, maybe I'd slept the wrong way and pinched a nerve. The pain spread through my shoulders, down into my chest. And I thought, oh my God, I just bought this place. I'm going to have a heart attack in my new residence and nobody's going to find me. You know, this is just awful. But then I realized that it wasn't from stress. It was someone who had wrapped their arms around me and was squeezing tighter and tighter. And I said, stop it. And immediately it stopped and dissipated. But that wasn't the end of it. On Thursday of the same week, at about the same time, same location, same routine, toast in the toaster, it happened again. This time, though, just was an immediate bear hug. Someone very large, very strong, very powerful, wrapping their arms around me and pulling me close. And again, I yelled, stop it, and it stopped immediately. I felt terrified. I couldn't see anything, but obviously there was something that had a physical effect on me. So I had no answers.
A house could feel physically threatening depending on what entity or spirit is occupying the house. Spirits are what they were in life. So if you're a violent person in life, if you're an angry person in life, you'd probably carry that to the other side. Spirits can get violent if they just don't want you around. They could want to chase you out.
It was a test. Let's see if you're going to stay around.
But Al did stay around.
I went upstairs. I turned into the northwest bedroom, and I opened the door. The minute I stepped foot in that room, I felt nauseous. I felt terror. And I felt as though something was pulling me down to the floor. The terror was almost debilitating. I was pushed a couple times. I was struck, and all of a sudden I felt a sharp pain in my right ribs. And that lasted for probably 3 weeks before it finally dissipated.
Al started to realize that his life was in danger.
I had a fight or flight instinct, and the instinct was to flee, so I did. It's really terrifying, the sense that you're not alone, and that something bad could happen.
After experiencing a string of strange events in his picture-perfect farmhouse, Al Kelchner was under attack.
The feeling of dread and doom was overbearing.
Al decided he needed outside help.
I decided to open up the house to investigative teams. It really started with wanting a confirmation that what was happening to me, one, was really happening, and number two, I wasn't losing my mind.
I'm pretty sensitive to the spirits, so when I get to a location, I can kind of sense there was a lot of animosity going on at this place. Before I go to any location, I would always try to do some research on it. I read a lot about the people that owned the farm initially. There was a doctor as well that lived at the property, and from what I understand, he did some crazy things with the children. He would molest them.
Did you hear that?
Within a few hours, we heard screams by doing some EVP sessions. The things that were scary to me were there were a lot of black shadows at the property. I heard noises coming from the staircase that was behind me. I heard somebody running down the stairs. I felt something come up close to my back, and the next thing I know, I felt just like a bear hug completely around my stomach.
This would not be the only investigation at Al's farm.
As time went on and I had groups come in, members of these investigating teams seemed to observe more and more shadow figures. One of the most amazing experiences I've had at that house was an evening when a small group was there.
Oh my God, look! Look!
One of the people sitting at the dining room table said, "Oh my God, there's a shadow walking back and forth in the living room." And sure enough, the window was completely blacked out. They observed them outside through the windows, walking between the barn and the machine shed and inside the house. And then that morphed into what looked like the figure of a person. And for the next half hour, we watched that shadow walk around in the living room. It was pretty profound.
Seeing a shadow figure, if it's a shadow man, you are seeing a spirit trying to manifest itself. It's trying to show itself to you. So it forms as a dark mass. Shadow people, on the other hand, they were never human. They're a bit more physical, larger shadows with heads, no necks, big shoulders. It could be you are going through a weakness at the time and they're taking advantage of it. You could be also dabbling in something you're not supposed to be dabbling in, and they come as a warning.
Shadow people can be pretty bad and could hurt people. I was scared, frightened for Al's safety.
I was told there could be up to 30 spirits in the house at one time, which I thought was an exaggeration. But when I hear that multiple times repeated to me over a period of years, then I start to pay attention. I knew the place was haunted, but I didn't realize how haunted it really was. There was a woman at the house who came to visit, and she described every entity, known entity in the house. There was a farmer from the 19th century who was in the kitchen. There was a male entity in the northwest bedroom of the house. The report was that this entity was a doctor who had a lot of negative energy or was not very nice. There came a point where I needed answers and I needed resolution. I believe it was 2011, to do something about the energy at the house. And no one had ever done a cleansing before.
Cleanse this house of all negativity. Only love and light may enter.
So we went from room to room, saged the corners high and low. It was my responsibility to make positive statements and also ban any negative energy What I didn't know, although I was told afterwards, is that the medium with me could hear growling, furniture being slammed.
Negativity. Only love and light may enter. Cleanse this house of all negativity. Only love and light may enter.
And apparently it worked, because as I look back on that period and prior, the energy was very dark at the house. It isn't anymore.
The cleansing seemed to rid the house of its ghosts, but Al wasn't done with the spirit world yet. There was one final ghost, and it was waiting, especially for him.
A woman in the house, who was usually found on the second floor, died around 1845. And the connection was described to me as something like a soulmate. She described Sarah as my wife from a past life. And it's really difficult for me to wrap my brain around, but they recorded an EVP. It's very brief, it's rapid, but it's pretty clear. It's a female voice saying, "I love him." It's hard for me to comprehend. I really thought about selling the house and giving up my dream. But I decided to stick with it and see what would unfold. Although I know there's some very negative energy, my experience for the most part has been positive, and somehow I managed to cope with what was going on around me and achieve some level of acceptance. And here I am 8 years later.
Not all ghost attacks result in physical assaults. Some of the most terrifying can be when evil spirits try to take away our most precious things. Our children.
Story number 3 featuring Kristen, take 1.
We were renting a townhouse and it was just a lot higher rent. So we moved into this house, which was a little cheaper. We had a yard and just had all of the amenities that we wanted.
After Kristen and her husband Ken moved in with their 6-year-old daughter Becca, tragedy struck.
My aunt committed suicide. She hung herself in her basement of her home. We're very close. Very close. I think she just had a lot of mental things going on.
At the funeral, Kristen said goodbye to a much-loved aunt forever. Or so she thought.
Just, you're a wreck after those things, you know? We got home, I was grieving, and I was mad at her. I was severely mad. I hated her. And I remember just yelling at her.
Why did you do this? Why?
Just yelling and screaming at her because she was putting our entire family through something we should never have to go through. I told her she was weak. I told her that I was ashamed of her. Of course, I'm screaming at this point at her. I told her that I hated her and that I would never forgive her. I'm sorry.
But Kristen had no idea that by venting her anger and grief, she might have opened a pathway to the spirit world.
Spirits and demons can appear more often in times of grief. When people are grieving, it sometimes opens doors for other things to come in and prey on the vulnerable.
I was grieving severely. I was angry. I was hateful.
Why?
So, yeah, I believe that quite possibly that I could have let something in at that point. I remember one night, it was probably about 11:30, and I was flipping over laundry. And I felt something behind me. And I turned and looked, and there she was.
Overcome with grief after the tragic death of her aunt, Kristen Whitesell had unwittingly invited something unexpected into her home.
And I turned and looked, and there she was. I took off running up the stairs screaming, and I turned around, and my aunt was coming up the steps after me. She looked completely different, demonic. You don't ever get that sight out of your head. And at first I thought I was going crazy. Like I thought, you're wanting to see her so badly because I didn't get to say goodbye. When it first begins to happen, you kind of feel like you're imagining all of this. This isn't real. This isn't happening. And you just kind of go on. Second time, you're kind of like, oh God. I would see her daily in different locations of the home.
Soon, other strange activity started to happen around the house.
My husband was working nights, and we were sitting in the living room, and we heard bumping going on upstairs. I went upstairs, and my bedroom door was open. I heard a big boom, and my bedroom door was closed. There was no drafts, there was no windows open or anything. I always felt like we were being watched. At nighttime, you would hear noises downstairs in the basements, like clanging. Go downstairs, and off in the corner, you would see a shadow in the corner. Looked as though a man that was hunched over who was hovering, and his back was turned to you. He scared me. He scared the crap out of me. Because he would never show me his face, and he just stood there lurking. You don't know what they're capable of. You don't know if by interacting with them, if that's going to put your family in danger, put them at risk. I felt like I was going crazy.
Until now, the activity had been limited to manifestations. But that was about to change.
When it happened the first time, I would remember waking up in the middle of the night. I would feel as though I was being choked. And I just felt like there was something that had its hands around my neck and was holding me down, and I couldn't yell out. I remember screaming in my dream, and I remember yelling for my husband. But in all actuality, I wasn't. He never heard me at all. It became a nightly thing.
Spirits can physically attack an individual. If you're dealing with a more malevolent entity, the idea is to torment you, to make you weak, and to keep you that way. Malevolent energies want to be in control.
And Kristen wasn't the only one in danger.
The kids would tell us that they hear things and that they saw things and that they felt things.
Searching for answers, the couple discovered that the house was an old railway house that had a secret past.
The house was built, it was a slave home. And the upstairs was the master's quarters. Off of the side walls, there were little rooms, and they were cubby holes where the slaves would go and hide when the masters were entertaining guests. Well, you still had access from Rebecca's room into one of what was the slaves' quarters. Rebecca would say that a man on fire would come out of that cubby hole that used to be the slave quarters. At first, she kind of made it sound like it was a dream. Mom, there's a man in my room. It started off, he was only coming maybe once a month. And then it became 2 to 3 times a week. And then it became a nightly thing that he was coming to her. He would encourage her to go with him. He wanted her. And he was going to get her.
An apparition of a burning man was threatening to take Kristen Whitesell's daughter away with him.
He wanted her. And he was going to get her. It scared her pretty badly. Immediately, as a mother, you're going into protection mode. Is he trying to take her soul? What's he trying to do? And all I could think is, you're not taking mine. It's not happening. She's mine. And I told her, you tell him no, that you're not going anywhere. You stay right here. I can't protect you if you're gone. There's no greater fear than the fear that your child is not safe in their own home.
Fearing for her family's safety, Kristen calls in paranormal investigators.
A lot of times, spirits can be attracted to loss or mourning. Demons can come around because they follow someone. A lot of negative energy can happen. To get started, we took in our EVP recorders, our K2 meters, and our DVR system at the time.
My husband and Jeremy were downstairs in the basement.
We had motion detectors on every floor, and from there, we just began asking questions. Who are you? What is your name? Why are you here?
Did you hear that?
All of a sudden, this real deep, nasty, maniacal man came over our EVP recorders, just laughing at us. It was very overwhelming and kind of frightening.
Voices on the EVPs, they were mocking my husband.
Jeremy, you there? Something's moving upstairs.
Our motion detectors would go off, and we'd go up to see what was causing it. And as soon as we went upstairs, the motion detector downstairs in the basement would go off. Almost like it was playing games with us.
Come in, Jeremy.
And all of a sudden, we just see a shadow just go from the front door into where we are.
Did you hear that?
Really fast.
And you can edit this out. I remember him saying his exact words, "Oh, they did not stay in that basement very long." I don't think that their feet touched the stairs. He had to be scared. Quite honestly, he had to be. Who wouldn't?
This investigation and client, to me, is one of the most active places I've been to. A part of me believes that it's just negative spirits from the railroad days. But another part of me believes that it could be demonic.
With the paranormal activity getting more intense, Kristen and Ken decided to get the house cleansed.
When we conducted the cleansing, we had 2 Wiccans with us, and they conducted the blessing, and they went into every crack and cranny of that house with salt and oils. According to them, they were able to kick out the real maniacal spirits.
Although the house was cleansed, the family couldn't live with the memories of what they went through and decided to move.
You can't force a child to feel safe again. It definitely was the scariest period of my life. You're not in control. It's time to cut our ties and go. My aunt had passed away, and normally that's who I would go to talk to. But she wasn't there. It's hard to recover from something like that. I'm never gonna go back there. I haven't been back, and I don't plan on ever going back.
This is just a quick reminder to subscribe. You'll be notified every time we upload new and fascinating content. If you enjoy this video, hit the like button. These are an immense help to our channel. Thanks, guys.
"14" featuring Mandy, take 1.
My name is Mandy Lynn, and I am co-owner of Liberty Tattoo in Libertyville and here in Antioch. We took over the building in May of 2007. When we first saw the space, we'd realized the capstone on the outside said it was built in 1904. There's a lot of history in the building.
When Mandy and Eric took over the space from a previous business, they didn't know renovations would stir up something terrifying.
We would close at the end of the night. We'd get in the next day and there's paintbrushes missing or rollers missing or... The art that we bought came with glass in them. So we decided to put them behind the counters and bolted them to the wall with the wiring to the frame, secured them to the wall. The first plate glass picture had fallen off the wall and was down on the ground and the glass was busted everywhere.
We just chalked it up as not being hung properly. The next day when the second one was down, we knew that something else was going on.
And then it was the last picture that had glass in it, had come down and was broken.
We put it up right. There's no reason why it should have just fallen off the wall.
If they hoped that would be the end of the strangeness, they were wrong.
When we opened for business, and the first thing that we noticed is that there were large male bare footprints on top of our display cases that are 3.5 feet off of the ground.
I was trying to rack my brain who would have been walking around barefoot on the floor, which would have been more reasonable than on top of the counter.
Mandy and Eric's employees were also affected.
The boy employees just were terrified to come into the basement. We have supplies down here that I'd have to send them downstairs in the basement to get, and they would fight over, no, you go, I'm not going into the basement.
The basement is super old and creepy. There's a certain area where the concrete is dirt, and it was either dug up or never filled in. And we found that to be very unusual and wondered what's buried there.
The first time I saw the hole in the floor, I just was trying to figure out why you would pour concrete everywhere else in this basement except for that one space and what was particularly special about that one spot.
Mandy and Eric discovered that they weren't the first people to encounter paranormal activity on the property.
Actually, one of my neighbors used to work in the space. She came in and we had metal ladders leaned up against the front door to the basement. And she said, "You need to be careful because there's plate glass in that door." And I said, "No, it's just wood, it's just painted." And she said, "No, we painted over the glass because Lloyd used to stare through the window, standing on the stairs and peer through that window, and that was directly behind the counter where all the employees sat." So she said, "We just painted the windows because it was freaking us out looking over there and seeing him standing there." It made me a little creeped out knowing that he was here. To me, it was very obvious that he likes women quite a bit. Even with myself, he would stand behind me and breathe. Even with me sitting in my chair, you could just feel him behind me. But there were multiple times where customers, female customers, would be across the room looking through flash, the tattoo flash racks, and there's no one behind them, and you could watch them go. You know, and I'd say, "Are you okay?" And they're like, "Was there someone just standing behind me?" And I'm like, "No." The racks would just open one leaf at a time, very, very slowly, all by themselves, until a particular sheet of flash was shown which had a bunch of angels on them.
Usually it was a female client would turn around in a panic and look at us, and we'd smile and wave and nod, and yeah, I see it too. After a while, it got to be a little bit much, so we put in cameras. One day, our employees called us and said, "What the hell happened here last night?" And he said, "There's a sign ripped off the wall, one of the pictures is down off the wall, and the plant, which is a very large plant and a very large planter, was tipped completely over." And my husband and I reviewed the security tapes. At about 9:30 in the morning, all at the same time, the sign to the handicap bathroom fell off the wall, ripping off the drywall sheeting with it, fell off the wall. The picture dropped off of the wall, and the planter just tipped over. There was no one in the studio. Like, our studio was not even open yet. The alarm was still set.
The spirit may destroy somebody's belongings or hide them. Mostly it's to get their attention, to let them know they're there, or that if they want something and you're not paying attention to them, they're going to get your attention one way or another.
Soon, Mandy would start seeing ghosts.
There is a little girl in here, a little girl spirit. The first couple times I saw her, she was just very playful. She would hide between the couches. She would play all over the studio.
I always have been a believer of paranormal. I've experienced too many things, seen too many things, felt too many things for me to say nothing else is going on.
But the little girl wasn't the only spirit. And the others weren't harmless like her.
One day I was taking a nap.
Mandy Lynn's new tattoo parlor was full of unexplained activity. Strange presences, ghosts, and falling objects. But no one had been physically attacked. Yet.
And as I was sleeping, I could feel that I was being pulled by my feet down across the couch. And when I opened my eyes, I realized that there was no one there. There was just no one there, but I could feel myself being pulled down the couch. And that's when I freaked out. And my husband came flying into the room and he's like, "What the hell is wrong?" And I'm like, "That thing just dragged me down the couch." And he's like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes." "Are you hurt?" "No." But a little freaked out that the thing can actually move me.
The attack prompted Mandy and Eric to bring in paranormal investigator Bob Jensen.
So we came in here looking to see if we had any real high EMFs. We also used the audio recorders, digital recorders, to see what kind of audio we would be able to pick up down here. With different pictures that we took, most of them came up on the full color spectrum camera that we had anomalies that would pop up. We had a couple that showed up near a floodlight. There was actually a figure standing there. The pictures themselves were captured at the far end of the basements.
Seeing the sheer size of Lloyd was very unnerving. I very much get the feeling that he's a sexual predator, and then to see him in that form made me very, very uncomfortable.
It definitely has a male physique to it, and there was a series of photographs. It looks like he's standing, and then the next picture looks like he's going into a crouching position. A couple more photos, it looks like he was sitting on almost like a crate or a box.
It's creepy as hell. I mean, this was like a more primal form, just a male shape, but very large, very powerful shape.
There was also audio evidence of paranormal activity.
On the audio recordings, one was a little girl's voice. The little girl's voice was warning us. She said, "Be careful, he's coming." Be careful, he's coming. She kept saying, "Be careful."
Bob decided to research the history of the building in an attempt to find some background on the entities.
There were claims that there might have been different crimes that were committed at this particular property. But the crimes against women that might be tied in with this particular location definitely goes back to the 19-teens and maybe up until the 1930s or 1940s.
For sure, finding out the history and that there was possible rape and killing down here made a lot of sense, because there's one particular spot in the basement that it's very hard for women to be near without feeling very uncomfortable. And when you ask every single one of them kind of what are you feeling, they feel like victimized sexually.
With this building, a lot of these fieldstone, there's also limestone and quartz. And limestone and quartz have been reported to actually hold on to residual hauntings. This is definitely a good catalyst for holding on to and retaining a lot of information that's happened over numerous decades.
With minerals such as quartz and limestone, things like that, I'm not sure if it's an attraction for spirits, but they can use the energies from those things. It can also trap energy as well. So if a foundation is built upon these things, it could fuel more paranormal activity.
Terrified of what Lloyd might do next, Mandy decided to take action.
After the investigation, we asked a couple of our friends who are spiritual healers and work with energy to come into the space and help us try and clear out the energy that was here. We had a couple people come in that used sage sticks and smudge sticks and just asked the entities that if there was something that they needed or if there was some help that we could give them to move to another place.
The cleansing worked.
I don't think the little girl was here any longer at all. I think Lloyd hung out a little longer. It took him a little longer to move on. I find it very important that we had the space cleansed and the spirits cleared, because I don't know if I would have been comfortable staying or any of the other employees would have been comfortable staying much longer.
They will never know what evil acts Lloyd committed in his earthly life.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share to keep fascinating content coming here at Nightmare Nexus.